Good morning or afternoon, everybody. Happy Monday. I hope you... No, that is wrong. It is not Monday. It is Tuesday. Oopsies. Well, happy Tuesday, everybody. Hope you enjoyed your 3-day weekend. Hope that you had a nice time. Just a couple things before we get into the lesson today. I am on retreat upstairs today. That is why I am not here. So I'm going to leave you a lesson because we're going to finish the Desert of Sin today with this lesson. And then tomorrow we'll be able to move into a whole new chapter. So a couple things though before we get started. 1, you will get your tests back tomorrow. 2, if anyone has not made up their test because they were absent on Friday, please, we will discuss this tomorrow. So if you know you were not there on Friday and you did not take the test, when I see you tomorrow, have a plan of when you would like to make up your test. Tonight for homework, you are going to have assignments 46, 47, and 48. And anybody who is going to be presenting for their math assignments will be presenting tomorrow. All right, so that's just our do now of today. And now let's get into the Desert of Sin and let's finish up this chapter. Okay, so we're going to start today in section 46, which is the Great Commandment. Okay, it's very simple, the Great Commandment. And this is what God is going to give to the people through Moses. Because remember, everything that they've been doing up until this point, they just keep messing up, and they just need to do what is right, and they just need to listen to what God says and stop complaining for once. So Moses says to them, be careful to do as the Lord your God has commanded you, not turning aside to the right or to the left, but following exactly the way that the Lord your God commanded you, that you may live and prosper and may have long life in the land which you are to possess. So God says to Moses to say this to the people. And this is called the Great Commandment. And you know what? On our notes here, we're going to fix this right away. It says the first, and sometimes it is referred to as the first, but I think we tend to get confused with that and the first commandment of the 10. This is the Great Commandment, okay? So the Great Commandment is as such, and you see it here in pink in verse 5. Therefore, you shall love the Lord your God with your whole heart and with your whole being and with your whole strength. The command is simple. If the people obey everything that they do, they are going to live prosperous and long lives in the promised land. And they have to, again, love the Lord your God with your whole heart, your whole being, and your whole strength. And again, if they do this and follow all of the commandments, they will be very happy in the promised land. What I want you to do right now is you should have your notes and your book split screened. I didn't say that before, but you should know that. Right now, copy verse 5 in your book and paste it into your notes because you have to know this great commandment. So I want you to put it on this side of the notes over here, like where I put mine, right here. Okay, but paste the whole thing. Copy the whole thing and paste the whole thing because you need to know this commandment. Okay, the Great Commandment. So go ahead, take a few seconds and do that right now. Now, and Moses is going to go on further to tell the people, you need to keep repeating these words to your children. Recite them when you're at home and go so far as to do the following. In green, in verse 8, bind them on your arm as a sign and let them be a pendant on your forehead. And that is what is known here in your notes as a phylactery. Okay, so this is a phylactery. And a phylactery is a piece of jewelry that contains the great commandment in it that they would keep. It's kind of like if you think of a locket with a picture in it, it's like that, a piece of jewelry that has a small little scroll rolled up that has these words in it for them to wear at all times to know what this great commandment is. And then in verse 9, it says, write them on the doorposts of your houses and on your gates. That's what's highlighted in blue. That is called a mezuzah. And mezuzahs are on doorposts, and they also contain this little rolled up scroll of the Great Commandment. Now, if you've ever been to a Jewish person's home, or even a doctor's office, quite often they have mezuzahs next to the doorway. Tomorrow in class, I'll pull up a couple of examples for you so that you can see what they look like, and maybe you'll recognize them. But that's what's in there. Even today in 2020, these people still keep this tradition. Okay, they still keep this great command because that is how important it truly is. Okay, so now moving on to section 47. So the one thing we have to understand is that the Israelites are getting really close to the promised land. And guys, we're like way into our 40 years at this point. So they are getting very close. And they're doing a little better after the bronze serpent. You know, the wandering for all those years really has kind of helped them. So these last few sections are God kind of preparing them for the promised land. So the first thing is to tell them to, listen to everything that he tells them and to follow the great command. And now here he's going to give them a choice, and it's going to be a very clear choice. Okay. If you obey the commandments of the Lord your God, which he gives you today, loving the Lord your God and walking in his ways and keeping his commandments, statutes, and ordinances, you will live and grow numerous, and the Lord your God will bless you in the land you are entering to possess. So basically, if you obey God, love God, as you've already agreed to do, you're going to have a long, flourishing life, and you are going to receive a blessing. However, if you don't follow God and your heart turns away and you do not obey, but are led astray and bow down to other gods and serve them, I tell you today that you certainly will perish. You will not have a long life on the land which you are crossing the Jordan to enter and possess. You don't follow, disobey God, you're going to receive a punishment. It's very simple. Okay, even today, we want to follow the rules. We want to follow the commands. We want to choose this life that God has for us. And that's what the Israelites are deciding here or being told. And they are like, yes, we're ready. Because at this point, these people that are still alive in the desert are the ones who have learned from wandering for 40 years. So they are more than willing at this point to say yes and to be able to do the right thing. And now finally moving on to section 48, the death of Moses. So we remember that Moses at this point had sinned with the rock the second time, okay? So now we're getting close to the promised land, but he is not going to get in. Remember, that was his punishment, unfortunately. And here's what's going to happen. So on that very day, the Lord says to Moses, ascend this mountain of the Abarim, Mount Nebo. That's the mountain that Moses is going to be on, in the land of Moab, facing Jericho, and view the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the Israelites as a possession. Then you shall die on the mountain you are about to ascend, and shall be gathered to your people, just as your brother Aaron died on Mount Hor, and there was gathered to his people, because both of you broke faith with me among the Israelites at the waters of Meribah. That's the big thing. They broke faith. They didn't have enough faith. So he's going to go up this mountain, Mount Nebo, and he will die up there. However, he will see the land from a distance. He won't enter it, but he will see Mount Nebo. So yeah, it stinks that Moses isn't able to see it. I mean, to get into it, but at least he can see it. He's so close. Remember, Moses' call way back was to set the people free from Egypt, which he did. Teach them the laws of God, which he did. Show them what it means to be faithful to the Lord, which he did. He's completed the task. He did what he needed to do. He got the people to the promised land. Now, if you really think about it, at no point does God say you're going to go into the promised land, but he did do everything he was supposed to do. So yeah, he doesn't get in, but he sees it, and it is incredibly successful. And God promises Moses that he's going to be faithful to his promise and to give the land of Canaan to the Israelites. So Moses is going to be able to die with the certainty that the mission is accomplished. So even though he doesn't get in, he has done everything he needed to do, and he is able to see the promised land. Now, when Moses dies, Moses is 127 when he dies. So he's lived quite a long life. And he, like I said, he did what he needed to do, which is really, really great. I'm sorry, not 127. Let's fix that. He's 120. And we talked about that because we said how his age is broken up into 40s. Okay, so sorry about that. 120, not 127. I don't know where I got that from. And now Joshua, and we talked about Joshua. Remember, Joshua is going to be the one who's going to lead the people into the promised land. Joshua was one of those 12, I should say, spies, and he was one of the 2 of the 12 that had faith that they could enter into the promised land. So Joshua is going to wind up leading the people. And that's where we're going to pick up tomorrow in our next chapter right there, with Joshua leading the people into the promised land. However, before we get into that, this box here, this Moses in the New Testament. So no, Moses is not going to get into the promised land. However, I always get the question, does Moses go to heaven? And the answer is yes. Okay, there's no doubt that he does. And the reason we know that is because in the New Testament, which we'll eventually get to, at the Transfiguration, Moses is standing there alongside both Elijah, the prophet, who we'll get to in a couple weeks, and Jesus. If he didn't get to heaven, he wouldn't be there. So it's very clear that yes, even though Moses doesn't get into the promised land, he gets to heaven, which is really probably like in some ways better considering he sinned. So he does get to heaven and he completed the mission. So don't think that this is like a sad moment for Moses. I have a feeling this was very, very bittersweet for him. And I'm sure it was glorious for him to be able to go up that mountain and look out and see the promised land. And he knew he did what he had to do. And it was hard. It was really hard for him. But he did what he had to do. All right. So this is the end of our chapter. You are now going to work on your homework, which is in Schoology. Again, this is assignments 46, 47, and 48. You can link them as one document, and I will check them tomorrow. All right, guys. So until tomorrow, have a lovely